All right, hey everybody, Techie 101 here, and I hope you all had a fantastic and particularly spooky Halloween this year. Woo! As you can see, I still have my decorations up, because Halloween doesn't end in my house until, like, the week before Thanksgiving. At which point, I decorate for Christmas, and then after Christmas, I don't really decorate for any other holiday of the year. I know people that go, crazy with that stuff, like every single month, from Christmas to Valentine's Day to St. Patrick's Day to Easter, decorate their whole place top to bottom, and it just seems a little excessive and a lot of work. So, how often do you decorate your place per year? Just for, like, one holiday or every single one of them? Do you decorate for Arbor Day? Those are the real questions. All right, I will give anybody a cookie that knows off the cuff when Arbor Day is every year. Yeah, okay. Anyway, today we're going to be talking about God Valley, as it is pretty happening right now in the flashback. It's very hip, to talk about God Valley these days. All right. So there's a couple of things that are going to emerge out of the God Valley incident. There was a lot of really prominent players here, on the chessboard, as it were, or the Othello board, or the Reversi board, I suppose is more accurate. Things that are a big deal. Obviously, Rox met his end on this day, was Domi reversied by Emu. That's really important. Garp being applauded as the hero of the Marines, basically turning into like a super iconic figure, if not like the most prominent Marine that has ever lived in recent memory, is Garp and the story of God Valley. Remember, most people in the world don't know actually what happened at God Valley. We didn't even know everything that went on at God Valley until we're actually seeing the flashback. But Morgans is going to write a story which is most likely going to propel the World Economic Journal to be like a worldwide newspaper that like everybody's reading. This is kind of the beginning of Morgan's monopoly on that. And he writes a very favorable article about the God Valley incident, just basically setting Garp up as the greatest Marine, greatest hero that ever lived, okay? And that's kind of where we get his story there. But there's a few other things that are emerging from God Valley that might be overlooked, and I don't want that to be the case. And the very first thing we are going to talk about is Captain John's treasure. Not just his treasure, but all of the treasure on God Valley. So I understand, because of everything else going on here, that we just kind of overlook that, because it's like, oh, okay, there's some treasure here. There's some gold and some diamonds and whatever. We don't care about that. That's trivial. All we care about is devil fruits, right? And, who's going to fight who. And, the Yonko emerge out of this event, right? We see Whitebeard and Big Mom and Kaido gets the dragon fruit. And then you see Shiki there. I guess he was a Yonko, right? So, like, those are the things you really care about. And I understand every single time the treasure comes up, it's easy to just, gloss over that. Of just like, oh, yeah, there was some treasure. Who cares, right? Like in the last chapter, Roger's crew was picking up all the treasure and, getting out of there. Shanks, of course, baby Shanks was asleep in one of the treasure chests. But there was a piece of information that was dropped in the previous chapter that is a very, very big deal. That kind of changed my perspective on this treasure. Gansui mentioned directly that every single one of those treasure chests that have been, floating around on God Valley has approximately 1 billion berries worth of treasure inside of them. I don't know if you know how big numbers get, but 1 billion is up there. It's a big number, okay? It's not the biggest number. That would be a Googleplex. But it's a big number, okay? And also, this is something we kind of focused on at the beginning of this arc. Bounty inflation, right? Because, like, Dory and Broggy's bounties were mentioned to go up because of inflation from 100 years ago. Well, God Valley was 38 years ago. So 1 billion berries back then is probably worth even more than now. I don't know what the inflation rate is or anything like that. I don't know how much more it's worth, but probably more, I would assume. So that kind of changes things, because that is an absurd amount of money. Do you know how long it took in this story before we even got a bounty that was introduced at 1 billion? We were at Zoe. It was Jack. Jack was the first person. I remember way back in the day, back when we were still in, Marineford, Impel Down, it was kind of implied that, oh, man, once we finally get Shanks's bounty, it's going to be 1 billion or something. Or Dragon's bounty, the most wanted man in the world. His is going to be 1 billion, because 1 billion seemed so crazy. And then Jack shows up. A commander, not even an actual Yonko, and not even the strongest commander. He was like, number 4 on the ladder, okay? Like, and he had $1 billion, right? So nowadays it's not that big of a deal, I guess, but still a really big deal. Like, $1 billion is like the stepping stone for reaching Yonko commander status. Now Jinbei and Sanji and Zoro all have $1 billion or more, and then Luffy, of course, has $3 billion. Yeah, so we all understand $1 billion berries can buy a crazy amount of things, okay? So John used his power of the Jiki Jiki no Mi, which was, currently Kid's fruit, or I guess it might not be Kid's fruit anymore if he's dead, but back in the day it was John's fruit, using this magnetic power, Big Eater, to absorb and suck up all of the treasure. Gonzui sees him trying to pilfer all that, so he shoots him with his bomb booger, the ability of the bomb fruit, which Mr. 5 currently has, right? And this starts off a huge scuffle where, Gonzui attacks John, and then Shiki attacks Gonzui, and they're stealing all the treasure. Like, in the last chapter, we saw Shiki making off with one single treasure chest, which might not seem like a lot, but that's $1 billion berries. That is enough to fund, I don't know, maybe not necessarily a massive fleet of ships, but like one treasure chest can afford a good amount of ships. Remember, way back at Water 7, getting like a really good top quality ship for 300 million was perfectly viable, okay? So getting a few ships, like that's a lot of money, okay? So John having this treasure wasn't just some trivial thing of like, oh, John's treasure, I don't know, maybe it might be a few 100 million berries. No, it's probably several dozen billion. If not, maybe, honestly, if you want to say John's treasure was like over, 100 billion berries, that's not really all that insane, considering how many treasure chests were on that island. I think in that one panel alone, when John was using his power to suck them all up, there was like over 20 plus treasure chests in that scene alone, okay? And there's way more than that, okay? So there was a lot. There was a lot. Now, why does this matter? Well, because John has his treasure that's still undiscovered, that's out there in the world somewhere that somebody could find. Buggy tried looking for it. He couldn't find it. He had to take a loan from Crocodile instead. So John's treasure is still out there. Also, Roger's crew made off with a bunch of it as well. Now, also Baby Shanks was along for the ride, but I've always said that I think part of what the One Piece is going to be, this isn't all of the One Piece, but part of the One Piece is just going to be a shit ton of gold, okay? Like, they go there, they find where the One Piece is hidden on Laugh Tale, and on top of what was there already, from the Void Century, before Roger got there, Roger also probably decided, well, me hearties, this be the end of our grand adventure. Take all that treasure and just throw it on the pile. The next person that finds it will have a good surprise. It'd be so. I want Roger, this might actually have been a thing that he probably would have done. Do you think Roger left a note on Laugh Tale? Like, he just took out a pen and was just like, all right, let's see here. Whoever finds this place, hope you know what to do with it. Hope you arrive at the right time, unlike what we did. We got here too early, but whatever. Hope you have a good laugh. And, why not? Here's a shit ton of treasure we got from God Valley back in the day. Pirate Goldie Roger. And then he just signs it. Just like they go there and they find a note from the Pirate King. That legitimately probably is the case. And they probably would have spent a lot of the gold, from God Valley. It was like 38 years ago was God Valley. They found Laugh Tale 25 years ago, so it's like 13 years of difference. I'm sure they spent some of it along the way, but a lot of it maybe they didn't. And also Roger was the Pirate King, okay? So I'm sure he had a few billion berries on his ship that he just decided to leave on Laugh Tale, So that's also a key factor there. So just pay attention to that, because this is like not like some trivial amount of money in the One Piece world. Whoever gets, and when you get that money, you can pay for like mercenaries, bounty hunters, other pirates, fleets of ships. Like, this could fund an entire Yonko operation, honestly. Okay, so let's focus on that. And also the fact it's a story about pirates. Pirates find treasure. That's like kind of a big point that Oda's focusing on here, okay? So then another big thing I want to focus on here, and this hasn't really been shown yet, but I would not be surprised if we do go this direction with it, especially after the last chapter. Dragon's devil fruit. All right, so Dragon in the flashback does not have his devil fruit, doesn't even really seem to know Haki or the Rokushiki. He really does seem to be like just a naval recruit, like fresh out of boot camp, like here he is, okay? In the last chapter, it was actually kind of heartbreaking to see because Dragon was on the ground just like punching the earth. Like, I can't believe I couldn't even save 2 children, 2 babies, you know, like, because he's here on God Valley. He sees pretty quick how messed up everything is. He's like, I don't want to be part of this. I got to figure out some way to make this right. And he runs into Shanks and Shamrock's mom and says, please just save my babies. And so I think Dragon was like, okay, I'm in this crazy situation. I did not sign up for this. I did not know I was ever going to be here or what I was ordered to do, but I have to make this right somehow. And I think the way he internalized that was the only way I could possibly seek some redemption here is if I carry out this mother's literal dying words and just save these 2 babies. That's all I have to do is take these 2 babies and get them off the island and find somebody to raise them that isn't horrible. Okay, I can do this. And I think that's what Dragon was focusing on the whole time. Well, he loses Shamrock when Maffey attacks, and then he lost Shanks when the big giant explosion of hockey occurred, right? And so Shanks performed the substitution jutsu, and he just has a log, and he's like, no! And so Dragon was like in this pit of despair of like, I couldn't even do this. What am I supposed to do now? Like, he literally seemed like he just lost the will to go on, okay? This would be, I think, in my opinion, and like from a story writing perspective, would be the best possible moment for Dragon to get his devil fruit, which is easily one of the strongest devil fruit ever. You could say it's a Logia that controls the wind, or a Paramecia that controls storms and weather in general, or a mythical zone. It doesn't matter. He has the power to control the weather in some way, and so that power would be insanely useful. So, I think at this point, Dragon is going to stumble upon that devil fruit. He's going to eat it. He's going to know the kind of power he has, and that's going to be the driving force right there to be like, I can do this. You know, Dragon realizes he can change the world. He has the ability to do that now. And it is this failure, the perceived failure that Dragon has, because technically speaking, he did sort of succeed, at least half succeed. Shamrock ended up in the hands of the Celestial Dragons, the Gods Knights, and he will be raised to be one of theirs. However, Shanks ended up, unbeknownst to Dragon, with Goldie Roger. Now, I'm sure Dragon would not, you know, give a baby to the Pirate King, you know, like, oh, he wasn't the Pirate King at that point, but, you know, wouldn't choose to have Roger raise up Shanks. But we all know it turned out, you know, okay. You know, the situation was fine. You know, Shanks had a pretty good upbringing and everything like that. So it all worked out there, but Dragon's unaware of that. And I don't know if Dragon ever found out about it. I'm sure he did. I'm sure much later on in life, at the very latest, when Shanks became a prominent pirate and started showing up on wanted posters, I'm sure at that point Dragon would have been like, oh, hey, I remember that kid. He survived. That's good. I'm assuming Dragon might have learned about this before Shanks became super well known as a pirate, but maybe he didn't. Either way, this is the catalyst. Dragon is going to eat a devil fruit pretty soon, get the power, and realize because he failed on God Valley, it's going to be like a never again kind of thing. And I'm going to change the world. I'm going to make a group. We're going to be the freedom fighters, and we're going to go out there, and we're going to liberate the slaves of the world, and we're going to try to abolish it all over the planet. And we're going to dethrone the celestial dragons, right? And that's really, I think, this moment that's going to be the fire burning in Dragon's heart of like, this is why I need to do this. I never want to feel that helpless again. I need to save everybody, okay? And so that's the way I think it's going to go. And if Dragon ever does learn about, like, Shanks' ultimate fate with the Roger crew and him eventually becoming a pirate and then Shamrock becoming a god knight, I don't think it would have been... I don't know. Like learning about Shamrock being a god knight, that might be kind of difficult because, you know, they're kind of secretive. They don't really leave Marijois, or they don't come out in public very often, and their exploits don't show up in the paper. So it might be kind of difficult for Dragon to learn about Shamrock, what happened to him. But Shanks, you know, maybe like a few years after God Valley, maybe he'll learn about what happened to Shanks. I'm not really sure. Okay. Because Shanks and Dragon, to my knowledge, I don't think they've ever really interacted in the story. I don't think so. No, I doubt that. No, I don't think they've ever had a moment together. Oda could include it, and it would be perfectly fine. There's a few spots in the story, in the timeline, where it would definitely fit, you know? So yeah, then we have Shanks, of course, who's, started off as a pirate, as an apprentice on Roger's ship, and then eventually grew up and became a Yonko. There's one aspect of this involving Roger specifically I wanted to mention, and it might not be that big of a deal, but we'll see how it goes. You know that scene when Odin joined and Toki was there and Momonosuke was eventually born? There was a scene where Roger was holding baby Momonosuke and was like, "Aye, Rayleigh, it's been a while since we've seen a baby on the ship, and of course they were referencing Shanks, way back in the day, right? And so I wonder if we see how Roger is during this flashback, right? Like, he was literally introduced in this flashback attempting to kidnap Shaki. So that's kind of fucked up. But I wonder if it's finding baby Shanks and raising Shanks effectively as his own son is the thing that might change Roger's perspective a little bit, might make him mature a little bit from the way we kind of see him here in God Valley to the way we see him a little bit later during Odin's flashback. Maybe. And that might also, the idea of him having a kid, right? I mean, yes, after Laugh Tale, he's like, well, I'm not going to be able to find the One Piece. We got there too early and I'm going to die soon. But, my child, my son will find it. And Rayleigh's like, you don't even have a son. And Roger's like, oh, not yet, I don't, yarg. Just like heading over to the South Blue. I have a Tinder date. I wonder how Roger and Rouge met. How did they meet? I'm curious, okay? I'm assuming they knew each other before Roger went to the South Blue and spent that last year with her, really. So I'm assuming they knew each other, but how did they meet? I don't know. But anyway, it might have started with, raising Shanks as his son, essentially, and it might have been a thing where it's like, I guess, I can be a father or something like that, right? I don't know. It's just how things go, I suppose. I mean, look, what happened with Rox after Rox met Eris and they had Teach. He didn't behave the same way around Shaki anymore, right? Okay, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, then of course we have like some of the more like I'm trying to not focus too much on like the huge things. Like obviously like Saturn and Emu being present on God Valley and Whitebeard and Big Mom clashing and Kaido getting the dragon fruit and Kuma saving everybody. Like these are like the major things, the major takeaways from this arc, that we knew about beforehand. But then there's like some other stuff happening in the background that I just kind of wanted to spotlight here. You know what I mean? Also, let's go through, like, the remaining members of the Rocks crew. So we know that Gansui might die here. I mean, we don't exactly know. We know he eventually ends up as a zombie on Thriller Bark. And by the way, Thriller Bark itself might be actually part of, or if not the entire island of God Valley, now that we have seen one of the mountains collapse. Another mountain could be destroyed. In fact, I think the other mountain is going to easily be destroyed by the clash that is about to ensue between Domi Reversied, Demon Rocks, and then Garp and Roger fighting all at once. I think that clash there is probably going to destroy the other mountain, and then we just have an island. I think, it's kind of hard exactly to tell the exact scale of God Valley, like how big the island is from one side to the other. It feels a little bit bigger than Thriller Bark did to me, but Thriller Bark was still effectively an island. It really doesn't seem like John dies here because like he still has to get the treasure and then go somewhere else to hide it. And then, wouldn't it be funny if the treasure was on Thriller Bark the entire time? Like John died on Thriller Bark, buried his treasure, left the treasure, armband to find it, but he didn't have a chance to hide the armband. Everything happened on one island and just mountains of gold, and Moria just never found it. Now that's probably not the case there, but yeah, John still has to get out of there with his treasure, hide it somewhere in the world. So he's not going to die here. I don't think Gansui dies here either, right? There's probably a whole story there about exactly how Moria came into possession of these really strong corpses and how exactly he got Thriller Bark and if Thriller Bark was God Valley or not. That's important. Then we have other members like Barbell. I do think Barbell is one of the general zombies that we see kind of wearing that Iron Maiden, get up. Oda could reveal that. Like a lot of the random members of the Rocks crew that we might just see in just a couple couple of scenes actually do show up, you know, in Thriller Bark as corpses, right? So yeah, I guess that makes sense there. And remember, like, their corpses weren't really a perfect tell on how strong they were in life. Like, for example, Gonzwee's General Zombie did not have the bomb fruit, so wouldn't have fought the same way Gonzwee did. Same thing with John. John's corpse didn't have the Jiki no Mi. They were just reanimated bodies that were very tough and sturdy even during their decomposition, but weren't even close to on their level during life. And then same thing with Ryuma when he fought against Zoro. Ryuma was, you know, set up as the sword god, and yet Zoro beat him pre-time skip. Yeah, that wasn't the total level of power they really reached, right? But, yeah, a lot of stuff coming out of God Valley, and I just want everyone to kind of focus on a couple of those. So that's the video. Hope you all enjoyed. This will be Teching 101 signing out. Thanks for watching, everybody. Halloween never ends!